The 1960s were a golden era for animated television, with networks experimenting wildly to capture the imagination of young audiences. Saturday mornings became a time for cartoons that pushed boundaries, blending humor, adventure, and bold storytelling. However, not all animated shows from this era were destined for success. Some were pulled from the airwaves almost as quickly as they arrived, fading into obscurity before they could truly find their footing. These lost 60s cartoons faced a variety of challenges, whether it was a controversial premise, poor ratings, or simply being ahead of their time. Despite their quick cancellations, many of these shows remain fascinating relics of a bygone era, showcasing the creative ambition that characterized the 60s. In this list, we uncover 10 of these forgotten gems that were pulled off the air far too soon, each with its own story of potential and misfortune. The Beagles, 1966. In 1966, The Beagles premiered as a light-hearted, music-centered cartoon on CBS, capitalizing on the massive popularity of Beatlemania. The series featured two cartoon musicians, Stringer and Tubby, who were thinly veiled parodies of the Beatles, navigating the wacky world of fame and fortune. Their adventures often included catchy original songs, which were produced by professional musicians, making it more than just a cartoon, but also a musical experience for children. However, the show faced issues from the start, as the Beatles' management expressed discontent with the characters' exaggerated likenesses. Despite its fun, energetic tone and the initial success with kids, the Beagles failed to gain strong mainstream attention. Ratings struggled to compete with the likes of the Flintstones and Scooby-Doo, and controversy surrounding the show's parody of the Beatles only added to its downfall. To make matters worse, in the 1970s, CBS purged many of its archived shows, and The Beagles was one of the casualties. The original film reels were lost, leaving only a handful of episodes behind. Today, it is remembered as one of the rarest 60s animated shows and stands as an early precursor to satirical music cartoons like Josie and the Pussycats. The Mighty Heroes, 1966 to 1967. The Mighty Heroes was a unique, satirical take on the superhero genre, created by the legendary Ralph Bakshi in 1966. The series revolved around 5 bumbling superheroes: Rope Man, Strong Man, Tornado Man, Cuckoo Man, and the unforgettable Diaper Man, a baby in a superhero costume wielding a giant bottle. The show's premise was to parody the superhero boom of the 1960s, showcasing heroes who were inept and constantly bungling missions. The slapstick humor and over-the-top scenarios were designed to entertain, but The Mighty Heroes didn't sit well with all audiences. While children enjoyed the comical antics of the heroes, many adults found the idea of mocking superheroes a little too much. Critics argued that children needed role models, not incompetent buffoons. This mixed reception led to a swift cancellation after just one season. Despite its failure at the time, The Mighty Heroes has since gained a cult following as one of the first animated parodies of the superhero genre. It paved the way for future irreverent shows like The Tick and Teen Titans Go. The series remains a testament to Bakshi's boundary-pushing creativity, even if TV in the 1960s wasn't ready for such satire. The New Adventures of Huck Finn, 1968 to 1969. When The New Adventures of Huck Finn premiered in 1968, it broke new ground by blending live action and animation in a unique way that had never been seen before on Saturday mornings. The show followed live-action characters, Huck, Tom, and Becky, as they interacted with an animated world. The animated characters were set in a world full of mythical creatures, historical figures, and exaggerated villains, which was a bold mix of genres for its time. However, the show's experimental nature proved to be its downfall. Parents were displeased with the liberties taken with Mark Twain's classic characters, arguing that Huck and Tom bore little resemblance to their literary counterparts. Children were confused by the tonal shifts between slapstick humor and serious adventure, while critics argued that it was too difficult to categorize the show. Additionally, The high production costs associated with combining live action and animation made the show expensive, and the network quickly pulled it after just one season. The New Adventures of Huck Finn was ahead of its time in terms of blending live action and animation, laying the groundwork for later shows like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Space Jam. Sadly, its cancellation was more a result of timing and financial constraints than a lack of quality. The Space Cadets, 1966 to 1967. The Space Cadets was Hanna-Barbera's attempt to capitalize on the space race craze of the 1960s. Debuting in 1966, the series followed a group of adventurous children, Snoopy, Scooter, Jenny, and Countdown, as they traveled through space, thwarting the plans of bumbling villains like Big Guy and his henchman, Mr. Big. The premise was wholesome, reflecting the optimism of an era when humanity was reaching for the stars. However, the show quickly found itself lost in a sea of similar space-themed cartoons, including The Jetsons and Space Ghost, which dominated the genre. Despite its creative premise, the Space Cadets struggled with budget constraints that resulted in repetitive animation, recycled action scenes, and lackluster storylines. The show's inability to stand out in a crowded field of space-themed cartoons and its lack of engaging action led to its cancellation after just one season. Although the Space Cadets remains a footnote in the history of 60s animation, its legacy is bittersweet. It reflected the enthusiasm of the time for space exploration, but was overshadowed by more popular and better-funded competitors. Today, it's mostly remembered by animation historians as a failed attempt to capture the imagination of a generation on the brink of the space age. Cool McCool, 1966 to 1967. Created by Bob Kane, the co-creator of Batman, Cool McCool hit the airwaves in 1966 as a parody of the spy genre that was gaining traction thanks to the success of James Bond and The Man from UNCLE. The show followed Cool McCool, a bumbling secret agent with a groovy 60s wardrobe who constantly found himself in ridiculous situations. At first, the colorful villains, each with exaggerated quirks and memorable names, provided an amusing backdrop for McCool's escapades. The jazzy opening theme and comedic elements made the show an easy watch for children. However, Cool McCool quickly encountered problems. Parents voiced concerns about McCool's constant incompetence, fearing that it portrayed authority figures as buffoons. Critics also dismissed the show as a weak imitation of Bond with lackluster writing and rushed production. Despite having a recognizable name behind it, the show was not able to maintain its early success and was canceled after just one season. Cool McCool is now largely remembered as a brief attempt to capture the spy craze, but remains a curious piece of 60s animation history, even if it was never able to achieve the same lasting appeal as other shows in the genre. The Beatles, 1965 to 1969. The Beatles cartoon series, which aired from 1965 to 1969, was one of the first animated shows to feature a real-life music group as the central characters. The show's premise followed John, Paul, George, and Ringo in exaggerated adventures that often mirrored their real-life popularity. The series included animated renditions of their hit songs like Help and A Hard Day's Night, making it a musical experience for kids. However, the show quickly ran into trouble. Although the Beatles' fame was at its peak, the band had no involvement in the cartoon, and their voices were impersonated by American voice actors, which many fans found off-putting. As the Beatles' music evolved during the late 60s, so did their image, and the cartoon struggled to keep up with their maturing musical style. By 1969, as the Beatles became more experimental and introspective in their music, the cartoon's light-hearted slapstick humor felt increasingly out of touch. Despite its initial success, the show was canceled, and the Beatles themselves publicly criticized it. Today, the Beatles cartoon remains a nostalgic artifact, remembered more for its connection to Beatlemania than for its artistic merit, serving as an early example of the commercialization of a musical group. Linus the Lionhearted, 1964 to 1969. Linus the Lionhearted debuted in 1964 and became an example of the aggressive commercialization of children's programming. The show followed Linus, a well-meaning lion, and his quirky friends, including Sugar Bear and Rory Raccoon. However, it wasn't just a cartoon, it was a 30-minute commercial designed to advertise Post cereals, with each character directly linked to a different cereal product. Sugar Bear, for example, was the mascot for Super Sugar Crisp. While kids enjoyed the colorful characters and catchy jingles, the show was criticized for its blatant use of animation as a tool for advertising. By 1969, the Federal Communications Commission intervened, citing concerns over deceptive advertising targeted at children. The show was pulled from the air, and its characters were relegated to cereal boxes and commercials. Linus the Lionhearted is now seen as ahead of its time, foreshadowing the rise of toy-based cartoons in the 1980s like He-Man and Transformers. However, unlike those later franchises, Linus was short-lived due to the growing concern over commercialism in children's television. Today, it serves as a case study of how the desire to market directly to kids sometimes stifled creativity and innovation in the medium. Wacky Races, 1968 to 1969. Wacky Races was a bold and creative attempt by Hanna-Barbera to blend eccentricity, slapstick humor, and action into one unforgettable show. Premiering in 1968, the show featured a cast of outrageous characters who raced in absurd vehicles across wild and dangerous obstacle courses. The eccentric drivers included the scheming Dick Dastardly and his sidekick, Muttley, as well as characters like Penelope Pitstop and the gruesome Twosome. The concept was simple, but incredibly entertaining, and children quickly became enamored with the outlandish cars and outrageous antics. However, despite its initial success, the show only lasted for 34 episodes. Hanna-Barbera quickly moved forward with spin-offs featuring individual characters from the series, like Penelope Pitstop and Dastardly and Muttley in their flying machines. The original Wacky Races was shelved in favor of these more focused spin-offs, with the repetitiveness of the race formula also contributing to its downfall. Despite its short run, Wacky Races has earned a cult following over the years. It is remembered fondly for its humor, creativity, and colorful cast of characters. The series may have been short-lived, but its impact has continued through reboots, tributes, and enduring fan nostalgia. The Adamant Ant Secret Squirrel Show, 1965 to 1967. Premiering in 1965, the Adamant Ant Secret Squirrel Show featured 2 segments, each centered around a different character. Adam Ant, a tiny superhero with incredible strength, fought villains with his catchphrase, "Up and Adam." Meanwhile, Secret Squirrel, a spy parody, used a wide range of gadgets to tackle espionage. At first, the series was a hit, blending superhero action with Cold War-inspired espionage comedy. However, the show struggled with repetitiveness, and many viewers began to feel that the formula was wearing thin. Secret Squirrel, in particular, faced criticism for its heavy use of violence, which did not sit well with parents and critics alike. By 1967, the Adamant Ant/Secret Squirrel show was cancelled, and the characters faded into obscurity. Despite this, the series remains a unique piece of animation history, reflecting the 60s fascination with superheroes and espionage, even if it wasn't able to sustain popularity in its time. Its cancellation signaled the shifting cultural attitudes toward violence in children's programming. As we've seen, these 10 lost 60s cartoons were quickly pulled off the air, leaving behind only a faint echo of what could have been. Each one was a unique experiment in animation, offering a glimpse into the bold and often misunderstood creativity of the era. While they may have been forgotten by mainstream audiences, their legacy continues to intrigue animation fans and collectors. Did any of these forgotten shows catch your eye? Let us know which one you'd bring back today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more fascinating stories from the world of vintage cartoons.